Hello everyone, my name is Jason2890 and I wanted to share a pretty unique team that I've been using from Premier League. It's actually gotten me from around the high 2700s in MMR to over 3100. I actually hit my high point earlier today at 3130 and ended up finishing the day a little below 3100 at like 3077. But I wanted to make a video just explaining this team because it's a pretty unique team that kind of breaks the whole rock, paper, scissors mold that a lot of people seem to think that Premier is all about. So it's actually as you can see, my team is on the right over here. It's a fighting plus double steel team. So I use Machamp as a lead with Metagross as a safe swap and Magnezone in the back. And you may notice I have the movesets listed next to them. I use pretty non-traditional movesets for these Pokemon. I'll explain why in a little bit. But on Machamp, I'm using Counter, of course, for the fast move. And I'm using Close Combat and Rock Slide. So no Cross Chop there. For Metagross, I am not using Earthquake. I'm actually using Bullet Punch, Meteor Mash, and Psychic. And then for Magnezone, I'm using Spark, Wild Charge, and Flash Cannon. So there is reasoning behind all this. I'll get to explain that in a little bit. But the main goal of this team is it functions as kind of one of those teams to bait out their strongest steel counter. So there are variations of this team that I've seen used in other leagues. I know like Sassafras has used a similar team in Ultra League to bait out their steel so that they can use a Charmer in the back. And Caleb Peng is obviously famous for his line with Double Grass. And so it's kind of along the same lines of those teams where you want to lure out their Pokemon that's the roughest for your team to deal with so that you can deal with it earlier on and have a Pokemon that's able to roam free in the back that does massive damage, in this case Magnezone. So typically what you want to look out for with Machamp leads, or with leading Machamp, is that you're hoping to catch, of course, like a great lead would be something like Rhyperior or Magnezone, or even Metagross is a pretty good lead. A really bad lead would be Togekiss and Dragonite, which are both very, very common leads. And there's a lot of fairly neutral leads. We'll get into it a little bit, but I might as well just show some footage. A lot of people have asked me, like, what do you do with the Togekiss lead? What do you do with the Dragonite lead? So I do have some footage to show you about how I play some of these leads and how the team really works. So let me start this video right here. So we have a battle here against Ron2020, using our team with Machamp lead. They lead Togekiss. We instant swap out of this. This is a terrible matchup. It's not even worth trying to get to a Rock Slide. So we swap into Metagross, and they instantly counter swap into Garchomp, which, as you all know, Garchomp is very, very good against Metagross. It's very good for countering Metagross and for Magnezone. So we know based on the counts here that they did not get up to an Earthquake, so we're no shielding this. They're just throwing Sand Tombs. It's fine. We're basically sacrificing Metagross anyway. So we're going to throw Meteor Mash there to at least burn a shield. Because they switched so fast, we couldn't get to a second Meteor Mash. Sometimes you can get to a second one if you get an extra Bullet Punch in on Togekiss. But we're going to go bring Machamp back in to deal with the Garchomp because we need to take the Garchomp out as soon as possible. So they actually ended up switching Garchomp out and bringing in Snorlax, which is kind of surprising. It makes me think that maybe they're aware that we have another Pokemon that they need Garchomp for in the back. So we're going to build up to 2 close combats here. We're going to throw one. They didn't shield. And then they're going to bring in... They bring in a Togekiss. So we're actually going to throw a Rock Slide right here. They don't shield it. But then I'm going to bring in Magnezone to go for a massive farm down to Togekiss. Togekiss takes 9 charms to reach a Flamethrower. This is only going to be an Aerial Ace or Ancient Power because it was not that many. And then we're going to actually throw Flash Cannon. This is the reason why we have Flash Cannon. If we end up getting into a situation where we're against a rough Pokemon like Garchomp in the back, they typically don't shield our moves. So it was kind of a little surprising that they did here. But we're going to counter that all the way down and then throw a Rock Slide at the last second to beat this Togekiss. That was a very, very close matchup. I thought for a second I made a mistake there because I thought, why did I save this video? It seems like I should lose this. But yeah, so that's one example of us being able to come back. Now, typically the way Flash Cannon works against Garchomp is Garchomp usually doesn't shield any of your moves because they expect you to have Mirror Shot and Wild Charge, and a triple resist Wild Charge. Mirror Shot is so weak at all, it doesn't even really matter. So usually you can catch a Garchomp off guard by throwing a Flash Cannon at them, and if they don't shield it, it does a little over 50% damage, like 52% or so. Unfortunately, this person seems like they're aware of the team already, so unfortunately, like a lot of people I've run into around these ratings are people I've played against before. They've already seen this team. I've seen a couple other streamers using this team as well, so it is becoming a little more common, so people are not as easily falling for it. But that is the idea behind why I'm using Flash Can instead of Mirror Shot, because typically I don't find myself baiting a lot, because Magnezone I'm usually bringing at the end when shields are down, or they have maybe one shield, and usually you don't want to go for a bait at that point. You just want to go throw in the big charge moves. So I do want to show another example of Togekiss lead. So here's another battle against JB the Traveler. So they lead Togekiss. We're going to get out of this matchup immediately because it's a terrible matchup for us. We safe swap into Metagross, and this is why we have Psychic. You get to Psychic on the same turn as you get to Meteor Mash. So if you throw it immediately, most of the time Gyarados does not shield because they expect it to be Meteor Mash, which is resisted and does very little damage. And because they didn't shield it, we can actually farm them down. We got the defense drop. You can only do this if you get the defense drop on Psychic. Otherwise, I usually just let Metagross go. But because we got the defense drop with that Psychic, you can actually just shield crunch and then farm them all the way down. It works out very nicely for that. And then they bring in Dragonite again. We're able to get to 2 Meteor Mashes, which is amazing. They ended up burning both of their shields. At this point, we're going to go bring in Machamp here. And they're just going to throw a Dragon Claw. And now we lured out their Togekiss. They think Togekiss is safe now because Metagross is gone. But unfortunately for them, we have Magnezone in the back. And this is what Magnezone really shines at. We know based on how many charms they use that this is not going to be a flamethrower, so we're not going to bother shielding this at the moment. We're going to farm up to 2 Wild Charges. We're going to throw a Wild Charge here. And then Dragonite is fairly low, but not in Wild Charge range. We're going to throw a second Wild Charge, and then we should be able to get the win right here, just because they are not going to be able to throw 2 Dragon Claws at this point. We're very close to a Rock Slide. In this situation, I probably should have thrown Flash Cannon, because Flash Cannon actually does more damage than Wild Charge. But I think part of my reasoning there was I wanted to make sure my defense was double debuffed so they could farm me down faster. But yeah, that's another example of coming back from a bad lead. A lot of the teams that people typically used are, like a lot of the balanced teams, end up playing out similarly to Rock, Paper, Scissors, where if you end up losing the lead, it's very, very hard to come back. But this team ends up giving you a lot of play because you have 2 Pokemon they're basically the same typing that have very strong moves. And so if you lose one of them, you can still be pretty effective with the other one. So I guess that's mainly the reason why I like using this team. Is for one it's a lot of fun, but for another, you end up having a lot of play even against bad leads. So let me go show another example. I have quite a few Togekiss matchups. Togekiss is a very, very common lead. So we have a match here against Zeromancer 22. They lead Togekiss. So we are going to swap out immediately, as always. Bring in Metagross. They stay in for a couple extra... They stay in for like 2 charms, which is surprising. But they bring in Swampert, which is probably going to be their best steel counter at this point. And we're going to throw Psychic again. Same logic as before. We throw Psychic immediately when we get it, so they think it's a Meteor Mash and don't shield. And then because we got the defense drop, we are allowed to just tank a Hydro Cannon. If they don't go for an Earthquake, I always no-shield the first one. If they don't go for an Earthquake, we can just farm them. We can shield once if it's a Hydro Cannon, and then farm them down. So now we have a lot of energy, and they bring in Snorlax. Unfortunately, we can't get to 2 Meteor Mashes. If it was a regular Snorlax, we might have been able to. But it's okay. We're even on shields now. I have Machamp against Shadow Snorlax right here. We built up a bunch. We're going to just throw a close combat. They do shield. I am going to shield, even though it's just a Body Slam. Yeah, unfortunately, they get to another move right here. I thought the first attack might have been a bigger one. But that does hurt a lot. But they brought in Togekiss to finish us, to farm us down right there. But unfortunately for them, we still had Magnezone in the back. I was trying to farm up as much as I can to make sure that they're not able to throw a flamethrower at me. And then here, I'm in a bit of a conundrum. If they have a superpower, then I'm dead. Luckily for me, it was just a Body Slam they were able to get to. They're most likely running, Skull Bash or possibly Outrage or Earthquake. But anyway, we ended up winning that match. And yeah, that was another example where we were able to lure out their best steel counter in Swampert by safe swapping into Metagross there, and then that way Magnezone doesn't have anything really scary in the back. Now, I will say that a lot of people have wisened up to this team, like I was mentioning before, and a lot of times they'll actually swap into like a neutral swap against my Metagross, and then kind of save. If they've played against me before, if they've seen this line before, then they'll save their hard counter to steal in the back, which is very unfortunate, but it does happen occasionally. I believe I have... Yeah. Oh, this is actually a funny matchup. Okay. Actually, hold on. I didn't go to it yet. Please excuse the video editing quality, guys. I'm not much of a video editor, but I wanted to share this strategy, so I'm just going to go with it. So there's a funny story behind this. I'm at 31-25, playing against Togekiss right here. We run into a Togekiss lead with our Machamp. Play it the same way as normal. We save swap into Metagross, and they bring in Rhyperior. And so we're just going to Meteor Mash them. Rhyperior, this is not a Smackdown Rhyperior, so this is doing a ton of damage. And they're going to try to farm us all the way down. Luckily, we're able to get to a second Meteor Mash here, which is going to grab both shields or allow us to win Switch. And they do shield twice, which is good for us. We're going to bring Machamp back in. We're going to end up having to double shield here because I think we might end up needing Machamp for the back. So I'm going to actually, or not double shield, rather. They have superpower, so we're just going to let the second go through instead of they're debuffed. They bring Togekiss back in. We bring Magnezone in, which is awesome. And this is only going to be an Ancient Power or Aerial Ace at most because they did not get up to a Flamethrower. So we're going to go up to 2 Wild Charges. We're going to throw this one. And then suddenly they bring in Melmetal. And then I realized at this point, I went into Master League instead of Premier League. But it ends up not mattering, luckily, because this team is still so strong and the other team is not using Dialga that we're still able to win this match. But it was a pretty silly mistake. I wanted to include this in the video just because this is not the first time that I've accidentally gone into Master League with this team. I feel like they should probably do something better than that because, I don't know. I feel like I'm probably not the only person that's happened to, right? But anyway, I want to show one last Togekiss video here. Hiak. We're going to go play against them. And then I'll get into some of the other matchups because you guys have probably seen enough Togekiss at this point. But anyway, we bring in our Metagross. They immediately bring in Garchomp, which is great for us because we lured out their Garchomp because Garchomp is really bad for our backline. So they're going to just use Sand Tomb. We're going to go try to Meteor Mash them a bunch. Usually just grab one shield here. If they hit lag, which does happen occasionally, you can occasionally get to 2 Meteor Mashes. There's also possibility that you could shield the second Sand Tomb and then guarantee that you get to a Meteor Mash, but then they could go for a very aggressive farm down, so I generally don't do that. Right here, they've built up enough for an Outrage. I am going to shield, and it is an Outrage, which is nice, and I'm going to try to farm them all the way down. I end up going for very, very aggressive farms with Machamp, because Machamp with loaded energy and access to basically nuke moves like Close Combat. Close Combat's pretty much like a fighting type Wild Charge. But I know these are only Sand Tombs. I guess they kept expecting me to throw earlier, so they're just throwing Sand Tombs. But now we have 2 Rock Slides ready. They bring in Togekiss. We're going to be able to throw double Rock Slides. And then we're going to go swap immediately into Magnezone to get an energy lead on whatever's in the back. They bring in Snorlax. This is not a bad matchup. They're out of shields. We have 2 shields. I'm going to actually throw a Flash Cannon right here because I don't want to debuff myself. A lot of times, whenever you're in this situation, your opponent waits to throw a charge move till after you're debuffed from Wild Charge. And there's definitely no reason to bait at this point because they have no shields. So that's another good reason to throw Flash Cannon. It's a little stronger than Wild Charge, plus you don't get the self-debuff. So in these situations when shields are down and you know they're waiting to throw a charge attack, it ends up working out pretty nicely. And then we are able to farm up enough to be able to throw a Wild Charge on Togekiss. So that's how we play Togekiss leads. Obviously, this isn't going to work every time. There are some team comps that are just going to be really bad for you. Swampert in the back's really bad. Garchomp in the back's bad. Haxorus is super rare for people to have. I've only ever seen 3, but that's very, very bad for a team. Everyone on my team does very poorly against that. Let's look at some other leads. Yeah, let's look up some Dragonite leads. So I think I have some Dragonite leads in this video. Yeah, so Wally323. Dragonite is probably my least favorite lead to play against with this team. For some reason, I end up doing very poorly. What I try to do, Dragonite gets to a Dragon Claw the same time you get to your 6th counter, which is 1 short of a Rock Slide, and I always try to catch... I try to time it so I swap into Metagross right when they're going to throw a Dragon Claw, but a lot of times people are not throwing right away, so it doesn't really work. But we're just going to go swap into Metagross. Surprisingly, this player is staying in with Dragonite, and they're just trying to do some more chip damage. We're not going to bother shielding this. It doesn't really matter. These are only going to be Dragon Claws, and we were actually able to almost get to a second Meteor Mash there. But we're going to go bring Machamp back in because we're very close to a Rock Slide. We're going to farm up a little bit because I know they're not at another Dragon Claw yet. And they end up dying there and then bringing in Togekiss. And now we're in we swap into Magnezone. because obviously Machamp does very, very poorly against Togekiss. But now we're up a shield, and we're against this Metagross. So we're just going to throw double wild charges here. We're going to throw one wild charge, actually, and then we're going to farm up a bunch. Because at this point, because of how much damage wild charge does, we're actually able to farm them down for this range. So we go for a very aggressive farm down there. We have wild charge. We're able to throw back-to-backs here on this Togekiss, and that's going to be game. Or pretty much game. We could just farm down from this range. They didn't shield the first one, maybe thinking that we would bait since they had a shield left, but at that point we could just throw double wild charges and farm down. And if we didn't get them with with Magnezone, we could actually counter them down from that range as long as we were able to land one of the wild charges. So that ended up working out pretty nicely. But they were using pretty much the standard team, pretty much the equivalent, the meta team, I guess you could say, of Dragonite, Metagross, and Togekiss, pretty much the three strongest Pokemon in this league. Personally, I don't think that they mesh very well as a team because Metagross ends up pulling a lot of the weight, and you don't really have a good counter to other Metagrosses if your Metagross is dead. So it ends up being a little unbalanced there, but I do see a lot of people running it still, a lot of people in the higher ratings, so it must work. It must work for them. Let me see another Dragonite video. See if we can get some similar footage showing maybe a different team. Let me see. Battle against Lex Master with a very nice shirt. But this one we got a shiny Dragonite lead. We're going to try to play it the same way. We're going to try to catch a Dragon Claw on Metagross. Typically doesn't work. I'm actually not sure if this is the best way to play this matchup. I'm contemplating either switching right away or maybe staying in, tanking a Dragon Claw, and throwing a Rock Slide. Because I tend to lose to Dragonite leads more than anything. So if anyone has suggestions of how to play these Dragonite leads, feel free to leave them in the comments. But anyway, they ended up staying in with Dragonite again. I believe maybe this isn't a very good example, because I think this ends up being basically the same as last time. And this time we're actually somehow able to get to a second Meteor Mash. I'm not sure what. They must have dropped some fast moves. We weren't able to last time. It's basically the same scenario. They double shield their Dragonite. At this point, I'm just going to farm this Dragonite all the way down. If they want to throw a Dragon Claw, that's fine. I'm going to have so much energy. They bring in Togekiss. Yeah, I think this ends up being the exact same thing. I think they probably have Metagross in the back, and that's why they didn't swap. Yeah, they have Metagross in the back. So this is going to play out similarly to last time. It's going to be even more comfortable because you're able to get that second Meteor Mash off and burn the shield on Dragonite. So we're just going to shield this from Metagross because there's nothing they can really do. They can't get to... They can't bait us with a Meteor Mash and then get to an Earthquake before we're able to win this. So we're going to farm up a bit, throw another Wild Charge here, and then be very close to another Wild Charge for Togekiss. And let's see. I think I have one more Dragonite. We don't have to go that because I think it's the exact same team again. Dragonite leads are tough. But one of the big benefits of this team is the Metagross matchup, because a lot of times Metagross will just stay in because it's a fairly neutral matchup. But because we're running... Oops, this is not the right footage. Hold on one second. Okay. I think this is it. Okay, so Dar Alman Row 7. They're leading Metagross here. So this is the benefits of having close combat. So instead of building up to 2, which is how a lot of people play close combat, I throw it right away, and that's to disguise the fact that it's close combat. Most people assume that I just built up a little past a cross chop because you're not quite at a dynamic punch, and most people don't expect you to throw that right away. So usually the close combat goes unshielded, and then you could just shield once and then farm down and be one counter away from getting a Rock Slide. So in this case, I'm able to throw a Rock Slide against Togekiss. I swap out immediately. There's no point in letting the Togekiss farm me down and getting extra energy because I have 2 Pokemon in the back that are basically the same anyway. So even if I bring in Metagross and they swap something, I'm just going to end up in a similar situation by, having 2 Steel Pokemon that play similarly against the rest of the team. So they bring in a Shadow Dragonite after we bring in Metagross. And we're able to just take them down with Meteor Mash right here. And this ends up going pretty nicely because we end up just being able to Meteor Mash their Togekiss. We didn't even have to let our Magnezone see the battle at that point. Pretty powerful. Yeah, those are really nice leads. Like Metagross is something you really want to see because people tend to stay with it, and it almost always plays out like that. Now, if they do shield the close combat, which does happen occasionally, but only like maybe 10% of the time, it's still a pretty positive play because you still just shield one Meteor Mash, and you get to a second close combat before they get to a second Meteor Mash. It takes 7 counters for the first close combat, and the second one takes 6. Whereas for Meteor Mash, they need 8 bullet punches for the first, and then 7 for the next. So I'm able to throw 2 close combats before they get to a Meteor Mash, or before they get to a second Meteor Mash. And if they do decide to shield twice, I just swap into Metagross right away because then the counter damage is added up to the point where they're within Meteor Mash range. So you don't even have to try to bluff at that point. They don't have any shields. You can just go straight Meteor Mash, shield once, because they'll probably throw an Earthquake if they decide to stay in that matchup. Other times they might just swap out. But yeah, it ends up working out either way. And the self debuff from throwing close combat right away is not too bad because the bullet punch damage isn't that significant. I think it's more beneficial to have the element of surprise by throwing close combat right away than it is to, preserve a few HP in fast move damage because you're going to shield their charge move anyway. So it doesn't really matter. Where was I here? Oh yeah, let's go play another battle. All right, battle against Shadow Brady. Another Metagross lead. Let's see how this one plays out. So same way, we're going to go build up to close combat. You get to close combat 1 turn before they get to, or 1 counter before they would get to Meteor Mash. So we're able to get that through, and then we're able to counter them down again, presumably. Sometimes people will swap out right away after they throw their Meteor Mash, which is kind of annoying if they're onto you. But this person also brings in Togekiss next, which is pretty predictable. And then we're going to swap immediately into Metagross again. This person has Magnezone in the back. So even though we don't have Earthquake, it's beneficial to build up to an Earthquake and pretend like you're going to throw one, because if they haven't thrown their Wild Charge yet, they're almost always going to shield, unless they know exactly what you're running. So we're going to let them Wild Charge us. It doesn't really matter. And I'm going to bluff another Earthquake because I'm able to get up high enough to pretend I have Earthquake, and they end up double shielding, which is awesome. So now they have no shields left. We don't even mind. This Machamp, we could just let it go. We have a shield left with Magnezone. They're debuffed already from throwing a Wild Charge. They're in Wild Charge range. I'm not even going to shield this because really it doesn't matter. I want to save my shield just in case the Togekiss is able to get to a move. But it doesn't even matter at this point. We have enough space to comfortably get to a Wild Charge and win this. So that's how Metagross matchups typically play out. I do have another example. Hold on one second. This is 1829. Okay. All right, so matchup against Freezing Sun. This video is probably going to be much longer than I anticipated because I have a lot of example matchups of how these play out. But another matchup against Metagross. And unfortunately, this person decides to swap out exactly when I'm going to throw a close combat. So they must be on to me. They swap into Gyarados. And I'm going to just bring in Magnezone right away. They're switch locked. I could just farm them all the way down. This is just going to be a crunch. Doesn't hurt that much. So we'll just farm all the way down. We'll have a lot of energy. So we're almost at 2 Wild Charges at this point. Shields are still even. We need to get them to start burning shields. So they bring Metagross back in. There's still 1 more Bullet Punch away, I believe, from throwing a Meteor Mash. So we're able to throw both Wild Charges, which is nice. And they end up using both shields there. And now they have to throw because they can't farm us down even though we're double debuffed. So they have to throw Meteor Mash there. They're pretty low on energy. We're going to bring Machamp back in. And we have shields. We're going to just use a shield and farm down from here. It's super aggressive, but we're going to make it happen. They end up swapping to Dragonite, which is perfectly fine for us because we still have our Metagross in the back. They have no shields. We could farm this Dragonite all the way down because we hit that Rock Slide. They don't even get to throw a move. They're probably going for a nuke move, and then they just ended up having to leave the match there. Because we had a move ready, we were just going to KO their Metagross. So that ended up working very nicely. One thing I want to show, though, Swampert leads. Swampert leads are very, very difficult to play against, and I'm not sure exactly how I like to play them. Typically, with the whole close combat strategy, I like to just throw close combat immediately when I get it. But unfortunately, with Swamperts, a lot of them, Swamperts are very spammy, as everyone knows. They throw Hydro Cannons like no one's business. What I typically like to do is tank a Hydro Cannon first, and you want to make sure that you tank the Hydro Cannon before you're debuffed, because otherwise Hydro Cannon will do a ton of damage. So I wait for them to throw first. Usually Swamperts build up to around 2 Hydro Cannons. Sometimes they will just throw right away, but it's pretty rare. So I'll let this get through, and I won't shield, and that's to encourage them to shield. So I want to make sure I throw my close combat before they throw their second Hydro Cannon, and I am able to get that through. I could just shield this now, and I win lead. So we're down a shield, but we did win the lead. But we end up giving up the lead right here. The lead doesn't really matter so much as it matters to get their Swampert out of the way. So we're actually going to switch to Metagross right away to preserve our Machamp just in case we need it later, either as another shield or because they have something weak to fighting, which they do in this case with Snorlax. So we'll let them Skull Bash us. We're not too worried unless they were to throw a superpower there. I think we're going to survive any charge attack. So we're able to throw another Meteor Mash there. We get it through. We do have a little bit of health left on our Machamp, so we're just going to go throw a close combat here right away. We end up getting that through, and then they have their Togekiss in the back, which they think, okay, it's smooth sailing from here. We got Metagross out of the way. But unfortunately for them, we still have Magnezone. We have a shield. We're able to just shield this and then throw a double Wild Charge and then win this. Even if they get the boost, which they do in this case, they're still well within Wild Charge range. So we just throw a double Wild Charge here and we'll win this. Yeah, that ended up being pretty nice. Yeah, they were just boost hunting at the end. That's pretty much the only thing that they could do. Flamethrower, we're obviously going to shield. We're obviously going to shield whatever they throw out right there. Swampert leads are not that common. I think I have one more Swampert lead video I can show. Yeah, we have a match against Jonathan Kelly, who I believe I've seen them around Twitch chats before. I'm not sure if they're a streamer, but I've definitely seen the name before. But they led Swampert right here. Same scenario as before. We're going to wait till they throw Hydro Cannon to throw our close combat so we can survive this. Even if they throw an Earthquake here, we'd still survive. So they throw their Hydro Cannon. We throw our close combat. Typically they don't shield. Sometimes they do. But they just let it go, and we actually are able to KO them, which is pretty rare. It depends. They must have dropped a Mud Shot. Usually they get to another Hydro Cannon before we're able to do that. They might have not even clicked it, or something else might have happened. We're going to bluff that we have Earthquake here whenever they bring in their Metagross. Almost always they will shield, as long as you build up to an Earthquake. So it makes it almost not worth it to have Earthquake in this case, especially if you're using Metagross as a safe swap, because when you're using it as a safe swap, your opponent's going to have shields, almost certainly. So they're probably going to use it if you're in a situation where Earthquake's going to one-hit KO something. We're actually going to shield this because we can get a Meteor Mash on them, and they actually swapped it. They sack-swapped Togekiss, which is pretty surprising. And then brought their Metagross back in. But unfortunately for them, we still have a very full health Magnezone in the back, and we have a shield. So we're just going to go throw a Wild Charge here. It's well within Wild Charge range, and then win this match. I was very surprised to see the sack swap of Togekiss into Metagross, but good for them. And what else do we have right here? Other matchups I wanted to showcase, like, I could show you guys ones where we get good leads, like Rhyperior or Magnezone, but I feel like those are kind of boring because if you get a good lead, you can kind of figure out how to play it from there. Oh, the mirror match. I do want to show the mirror match off a little bit. I believe I have a Machamp mirror match in this video. Yeah, Mixmaster Rick. Okay. So it's tough. If they build up to 7, which a lot of people do now to bluff close combat, then I'm not sure if they have close combat. They wouldn't CMP over us. I'm actually going to shield here, and they do have close combat. Generally, you don't want to be the first one to throw close combat, but they actually swapped after throwing close combat into Snorlax and then no shielded. They must have anticipated that I had Cross Chop or something. But they brought Machamp back in. We're almost at another close combat, so we counter once and then throw close combat. They end up shielding that, and then we end up bringing in Metagross. Now at this point, I know that Metagross technically survives a close combat here, but if I know they're running close combat, they're most likely running close combat Rock Slide, so we're going to be able to get to another move right there. And then we have full energy right here. We're throwing a Meteor Mash. This person's a madman, does not shield. We're going to throw another. We're going to build up to an Earthquake and throw this. And they do decide to shield there. We don't have any Protect Shields left, so we're just going to let this Wild Charge come through, of course. But now, right now, they're already in Wild Charge range, and they cannot KO us with one Wild Charge, so it doesn't matter at this point. They would need to get 2 Wild Charges through to have a chance at beating us. So we're just going to go bring in Magnezone right away and just throw a Wild Charge. Other miscellaneous leads, occasionally you run into some pretty odd stuff, like Haxorus, like I mentioned. Haxorus is just very bad. Very bad for this team. Haxorus with Dragon Claw and Night Slash. Night Slash is super effective against Metagross. Counter is super. They use Counter for their fast moves. Counter is super effective against Magnezone, and then Counter also chunks away at Machamp, and it's so spammy because both of the attacks have 35 energy costs. So that ends up being extremely bad for for our team. If they lead it, you got to hope that they just stay in and you're able to KO them with Machamp. I don't have any footage of me beating a player that has Haxorus because I think I've only seen them 3 times since I hit rank 10, and I've lost all 3. So if anyone figures out a good way to play against Haxorus, let me know because I definitely need the advice. But of course, this strategy is not foolproof. There's definitely some bad team comps. So I'm going to show a few battles off that I lost to, unfortunately. Let me see. Atacazam, who I've also seen around Twitch before, but this is a pretty typical Dragonite lead fight. I showcased a couple where I was able to win on a Dragonite lead, but most of the time it does not go that well. We did our normal try to catch a Dragon Claw on Metagross strategy. It did not work. They used an Outrage here instead, and then they bring in Snorlax. And maybe they're familiar with this matchup, with throwing an Outrage and then bringing in Snorlax, because they are able to lick us down before we get to our second Meteor Mash, just barely. So they have a lot of energy here. We bring in Machamp again. We're going to have to absorb probably 2 Body Slams. Yeah, they throw a Body Slam there. They're going to throw another, presumably a Body Slam. But I was worried that it might have been a superpower. And now we have 0 shields left to 2. We do have a lot of energy at least. We're going to try to pressure shields with this Rock Slide here on the Dragonite. And throw another one right here. And then we're going to go bring in our Magnezone. Now, this is not really that great of a matchup because they still have a Dragonite that has a lot of health. You don't want to be the first to throw Wild Charge, but at the same time, you know, I can't let my opponent catch up to us on energy that much. So they throw a Wild Charge. We're going to throw our second Wild Charge here to KO them, but unfortunately we don't have enough health left to take down their Dragonite now, and we're not close enough to another Wild Charge. So there's nothing we can really do there. They have a charge move already ready, so they're just going to throw a Dragon Claw at our Machamp. And we lose that match. So, what are you going to do? Oh, yeah, here's a good battle. Against... actually, I think it's right after this. I think I can just let this video play. It's going to take too long to find this match. Let me just skip ahead a little bit. Yeah, so, battle against the Asian Milkman. For those of you that don't know the Asian Milkman, he is a fantastic Pokemon Go PvP player. Very, very smart. Has a lot of interesting lines. He's posted a lot on Sulfurina with his strategy, but I cannot seem to beat him. I've faced him maybe 5 times, and I've lost every single time. But he has a Swampert lead right here, and I'm going to try to play it the way that I normally play it, where I wait for him to throw first, and I throw a close combat. Hydro Cannon comes through. I decide, okay, I'll go try to throw this close combat. He's able to get a second Hydro Cannon through, which is unfortunate. So I figure at this point, I'll just build up a little bit, throw close combat. He ends up shielding. And then I try to throw a second close combat right when I get to it, because I get to it before he gets his third Hydro Cannon, and he swaps into Togekiss. So that close combat did nothing. I'm going to try to farm the Togekiss all the way down, but he gets to a Flamethrower right before. If Close Combat just did a little more damage, I'd be able to just farm all the way down with no shields invested. But unfortunately, he gets the Flamethrower right there. I have no shields left. He's going to bring in Magnezone. Magnezone to the back. I have enough energy for an Earthquake. I bluff it. At this point, he has no shields, so I really should just be throwing Psychic here. Psychic's a little better than Meteor Mash because Meteor Mash is double resisted. But this matchup's pretty much over. We're not going to be able to KO his Swampert. His Swampert's very close to another charge attack. So yeah, they're able to throw a Hydro Cannon here, KO us. And then we bring in Magnezone. They're able to throw another Hydro Cannon. So I think, okay, we can farm up a little bit more. We're going to throw a Wild Charge here if those Mud Shots are really, really adding up. And unfortunately here, I didn't even try clicking on the Wild Charge. I realized at this point I needed to build up to a little more than a wild charge, because wild charge against a Magnezone that's not debuffed does a little under 40%, and they were not quite at 40%. So fortunately, we lost that battle. Here's an instance of this team losing a battle against a really good lead. The problem is, since this is not your typical rock, paper, scissors team, you don't have an answer for everything that they switch into necessarily. So here's a matchup against Biospark 2. The best lead you can get, technically, is a Shadow Snorlax. Shadow Snorlax takes so much damage. Machamp's the best counter to it. They bring in their own Machamp, and I throw this close combat. They shield, and then I bring in my Metagross, because I don't really have a good answer to Machamp. I don't have a Togekiss on my team. I don't have a Dragonite on my team. And I'm afraid that they were going to have a Dynamic Punch or Close Combat, so I shielded there. It's just Cross Chop. Cross Chop's so spammy, though. We have to go throw unless we want to go absorb more damage from Cross Chop. So I end up throwing this Meteor Mash here, and then they end up bringing in their Shadow Snorlax again. We're able to just get to this Meteor Mash, which is nice. And they let it go through. So we're going to bring Machamp back in. And I'm thinking at this point, this is probably a Body Slam, right? But it's a superpower. And then they end up bringing in their Metagross, which is in the back. At this point, I realized, uh-oh, I made a mistake here. They're probably going to shield this. And luckily for me, they throw. I was worried they were going to farm us all the way down. But unfortunately for us, we're able to get this wild charge through. But we should have overfarmed a bit. We did not overfarm. We made a mistake there. Their Snorlax we know is running superpower, and we're debuffed. We just barely don't get to the wild charge before they get to the superpower, and they win the match. So there is very little margin for error. You really need to know your matchups. You really need to know when you can overfarm and what Pokemon your opponent could possibly have. I do want to show one last one before I close this off, just to show how bad this team is against Haxorus. I did save one clip of me facing a Haxorus, and it just completely demolishes my team. So if you start to see a rise in this team, you'll probably see a rise in Haxorus, because Haxorus is just so bad. So this is against Shogo 310. They lead Haxorus. So let's see how this plays out. I really should, in the future, just start shielding Machamp, because Machamp's really my only thing that can kill this. And Dragon Claw, I didn't know how much damage it does, but Dragon Claw does a ton of damage, as you can see there. And they just bring in Metagross right away. They swap out of it. So here's their Metagross. I make a boneheaded mistake here and think, okay, I thought I was counting, and I thought they weren't at an Earthquake. They were at an Earthquake, so this matchup's pretty much over already. We're going to go farm them down, but unfortunately, they have these shields. We're not even able to throw our move because of, I don't know, random janky stuff, but there's nothing we can do here. Now, this is not an example of a well-played match, but Haxorus is very, very rough for our team, as you can see here. It just chunks away at Magnezone. We're going to double shield here for no reason, really, because we have no chance of winning this, unless they decide for some reason to not shield this and then just to stop attacking. But I just wanted to know what they had in the back. Anyway, that's the team that I wanted to showcase, guys. I hope you enjoyed watching this video. I want to do I'm going to do a write-up as well, and I do like running these non-traditional movesets. It comes in very handy whenever you safe swap into Metagross and they swap into Swampert or Gyarados, because like I said, because you get to Psychic on the same turn as you get to Meteor Mash, if you throw it right away, they anticipate it's just going to be a Meteor Mash, so they usually don't shield, and it gets them into perfect range to farm down if you get the defense drop, or to just let Metagross go and farm down with Machamp. And Machamp with a lot of energy, and this moveset is really nice. Like, we're basically using only nuke attacks, because as you can see, like, between all three of my Pokemon and all of their 6 charge moves, the weakest move is Rock Slide, which is still an 80 power move, and it's fairly cheap. So we're running basically all nukes here. Hope you guys enjoyed this team. This video ended up being quite a bit longer than I anticipated, so thank you if you watched through the whole way. Give a like, comment, and subscribe if you're not already on this YouTube. And catch me on Twitch. I try to stream my sets basically every day. I might miss a day every now and then, but come hang out with us on Twitch. It's fun. As you can see, I do a lot of MS Paint drawing. All those graphics on the right, and this whole layout was just done in MS Paint. I have an MS Paint emote as well. But yeah, we have a lot of fun. Hope you guys enjoyed this video and this team, and hope it works out for you. See ya.